Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we know that there's so many people that we meet who are feeling those connections with the deceased. And why don't you just introduce her, Heidi?
Okay, Mom, we're going to be talking today with Patrice Karst, and she is the best-selling author of The Invisible String with over 1 million copies. And that's how many have been sold. She is the author of the Invisible Leash, The Invisible Web, and You Are Never Alone, and the co-author of the Invisible String Workbook. So these are all phenomenal books and about continuing bonds with those that we love. And she is also lives in Southern California and was born in London. So welcome to the show, Patrice.
Hi, thank you. So good to be here with you both today.
It's great to have you on. And I wondered, where did you get the idea?
My son was little and I was a single working mom. When I would take him to school in the morning, he would cry. He had horrible separation anxiety. So one day I just told him what was sort of obvious to me, which was that we are all connected by an invisible string. And I told him that if he missed me, all he had to do was tug on the string and I'd feel it in my heart and I would tug it back and he'd feel me and we would be connected all day. And literally it was like, voila, his separation anxiety stopped that day. Once he had that idea that we were connected by an invisible string, that was it. So then he told all his little friends about it and they all wanted to know if there's really an invisible string. Could you tell us about the invisible string? So I knew I had something really special, and I decided to write it as a children's book because I thought, how better really to explain something so simply, but a children's book. And luckily I got a publishing deal and the book came out. I never wrote it per se as a grief book. It was a book just describing the invisible string that connects us all. But there's one page in the book and one word on the one page. Children are asking their mom if their invisible string can reach Uncle Brian in heaven. And mom says, yes, it reaches even there. And then you go on to the next page and it's back about the invisible string with people here on earth. But that one page and that one word, heaven, that one description as the children are looking up to the sky, turned the book into the #1 book for grief and loss for children. Wow. Almost continuously. It's been that way for years now. So what does it mean, right? What does that really mean? For me, I've always had a deep spiritual belief that those that we lose in the physical, we are still deeply connected to on levels that are even beyond what words could explain. They still exist. We still have our bond to them. They feel our love. We feel theirs. We're still connected by an invisible string. And because the book started to reach so many, especially parents that had lost children and have another sibling who now is being helped by the invisible string. I mean, I would say probably 80% of the letters I get, and I get a lot of letters, are from people that are in the throes of grief. Mm-hmm. And it's very powerful to meet people in that place because there is no place where someone's not more vulnerable, raw, and present than when in grief.
And I like it because it's hard to tell people for kids to understand the continuing bonds with somebody after they've died. And I think this makes it very concrete for them where they understand, okay, even though I can't see the person and they're dead, they're still in my life. They're still a big presence. They're still connected to me through this invisible string.
Now we've got all that string theory in the past, how
I
many
know.
years about how everything is connected. I mean,
Yeah, I even wrote I have in the back of the book a letter to the reader in the paperback. And I say I like to think of it as my version of string theory. Is yes, we are. And that's just, it's the most obvious thing to me. So when I get letters or emails and texts and Instagram messages from people that are in grief, and they are sharing with me how the book has helped them or their family or their other children or what have you, or being used at the funeral services or this and that, and the one thing I inevitably say every time is the invisible string is real. It's not just a children's book. I wrote it as a children's book so we could get the message out there, but the invisible string is the realest thing there is. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it certainly doesn't end when someone drops their physical body, or when an animal drops their physical bodies, not by a long shot.
your dog died a year and a half ago, and
Yeah,
coincidentally, you were writing
yeah.
the Invisible Leash.
I was in the throes of writing the Invisible Leash, which is my book about our animals.
Wow.
And they passed away because I had so many people writing to me and saying, we use the invisible string, to explain death of animals too, but could you write one that's specifically for animals? So I did that. And while I was finishing up, my 14-year-old dachshund, Coco, got very, very sick and passed. It's becoming sort of known as one of the go-to books for children to be able to process the loss of their animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that idea, because sometimes the first loss kids have are their animals. And also for children that have lost people in their lives, it's easier sometimes to talk about the animal first when you're talking about a death, and animals are such an important part of people's families.
Absolutely.
So I love that you're paying, you're acknowledging and validating that through this book.
Yeah. And it's really, it's super important. I get asked this a lot, like, well, should you really bring up death to children unless there's a death that occurs? And I just think the sooner you can start that conversation with kids, the better, because inevitably children are going to come across death, whether it's a goldfish floating on its side or a bird they see on the ground, or they hear on the news someone died. They have no way of processing that unless there's an adult to help them understand what that is. So I just think it's really important to actually bring up and to have conversations about death, because death is the biggest inevitability of life. Until it actually happens in life, death is not something we talk about comfortably. And I think we need to change that so it's not so scary and spooky for children.
One thing I love about the invisible string too, and the invisible leash idea, is that I think it's important for all of us to realize, as you said, that love transcends, and that there can be more than one string. Just because you love Coco doesn't mean you can't love the new dog. And you have separate love for each, and it's strong. Right.
And what you begin to see, is that, and you exactly got it, we have way more than just one string. We have strings to our children, to our parents, to our grandparents, to our loved ones, so we have strings everywhere. And then all of these strings where they all intersect, and we realize we're really living in an invisible web.
Oh, I love it. Patrice, you can be connected to Coco on the other, invisibly, and connected to your new dog. You can be connected to both and still stay connected to both.
That's right. Absolutely.
I like that idea too.
Yeah.
You don't have to let go of one.
No, not at all. They're separate strings, they're separate leashes, they're separate, and yet at the end of the day, you begin to realize, wow, there is so much love around us all. At the end of the invisible string, the last words in the book are, no one is ever alone. When I lay in bed at night, and I sometimes just say, I'm gonna tap in and feel my strings. I'm gonna feel who I'm connected to and feel them for a minute.
Talk to us a little bit about your workbook and what your hope is for that for people.
It is full of so many activities to help children. Well, actually, we have adults using it too, but to help children take the message of the invisible string to the next level. There's like different activities, like where does my string go, where they draw out the strings to the people they love, and just different fun things. The marriage of the two, it's just the most creative workbook you've ever seen. There's just room for the kids to draw, and there's no end to the fun things they can do. And then in the back of the book, there's all these really cool, beautiful, multicolored cards that are like, not really affirmation cards, but they're little cards about the invisible string, and they can break, they're perforated, so they can then use them in different games and activities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Love it. An invisible string, realizing you're connected to all the love in the world is important.
Tell people how they can get a hold of you and the book and anything that you would like to talk about on this.
Oh, well, sure. If anybody wants to connect with me, my website is patricekarst.com, PATRICEKARST. So patricekarst.com. I love getting letters from my readers. I write everybody back. I think that's been one of the reasons the book has done so well, because it's almost like with each person that I form a connection with that writes to me, we have a string for him. So it's like there's all these like string ambassadors out in the world spreading strings. And yeah, so I love it when people connect with me. And I'm working on new books. I'm working on my memoir now. And in 2023, I have 2 new children's books coming out.
What's your website?
It's www.patricekarst.com.
Patrice, thank you so much for being on the show today and for all the love that you're sending out. And I guess we've got our strings now, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All right. Well, lovely to meet you both.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you for all the love that you're spreading through the world.
Thank you. Take care. You
and
too.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.